with a whole lot of truth. Remedy Revolution is here for you. Ooh. And now here's your host, Erin Page.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Remedy Revolution podcast. My name is Erin, and today's guest is actually somebody who I've known for quite a while. She is here as a representative of ICAN, the Informed Consent Action Network. And this week is something very special, the Podcasthon, where we, as podcasters, choose a particular cause that we feel is worthy of donation. And we implore all of you, our listeners, to go ahead and donate to those particular causes. I have chosen ICAN, the Informed Consent Action Network, because they have been championing a mission that I feel is near and dear to my own heart. And I'm very excited to welcome her today. Welcome to Cat Layton.
Thank you, Erin. So sweet of you to have me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. So I always have to ask, why did you start this journey with ICAN? What is it that brought you into the fold of this particular mission?
Well, that's a good question. It's kind of a crazy story, but my background is a little bit eclectic. I have a degree in vocal performance, and I was an opera singer. And then my younger son was pretty severely injured by vaccines, and that kind of changed the course of my life. I remember being on stage at one point and just thinking, like, what am I doing here? This like doesn't matter. I don't care about this. And soon after, the movie Vaxxed came out, and so my husband Patrick Layton came up with this idea to start Facebook groups of a bunch of, in a bunch of different cities, but starting in Orange County, California, where we're originally from, to get the movie screen there. It was super successful. And then we kind of helped everybody across the country repeat like our blueprint of what we did. So it really helped like launch the national tour of the movie. And through that, I met Dell. And when he was starting the Informed Consent Action Network, he asked me to come on board to kind of run operations for the organization and help in a few other areas since I had been diving so deep into the science because of our personal story. So that's kind of how that all came about, kind of like a right place, right time situation.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, sparked by a vaccine injury.
right, absolutely.
Yeah,
So I always say like most of us don't come here by choice. We come here more more because
yeah,
of our experience. Very compelling stories. I think that so many of the people who were in the film Vaxxed who told, and I'm sure your story is no less scary and frightening. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like as a parent?
yeah. Well, I mean, so actually, it's kind of awful because both of my kids were injured pretty severely, but my older one was able to basically make a full recovery. So we are super, super happy about that. But our younger son kind of fell into a deeper hole, so to speak. Um, so I was already pregnant when my older son was diagnosed on the spectrum and did not connect it to vaccines, I think just because I didn't want to. Um, and and one of the things I was told was like, oh, it's your first kid. You just didn't see the signs. Like he was always like that, even though he definitely regressed from MMR. And so when I had my younger son, we watched him like a hawk. So, we were like, we're not going to miss any signs this time if anything happens. And he was fine. And then I took him in for a pneumococcal booster and he was gone the next day. Never came back. And it was a horrible, terrible feeling because I went online and looked at the ingredients and excipients lists on the CDC website. And the second I saw that, I just knew that we had really, really made a big mistake. And so, like I said earlier, when that happened, like really nothing else mattered to me or my husband than number one, trying to heal our kids and get him better. And number two, to scream it from the rooftops so that it didn't happen to anybody else, because it is something that I would not wish upon my worst enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's so important is that not only did you jump in to help your own children, but then you jumped in to try to help others and preventing them from making some of the mistakes that maybe you made as a parent. And,
Yeah.
especially while going through that. And I think that's, it takes a huge amount of perseverance as well as empathy for, other people and other people's children in order to step into that role. Can you tell me a little bit about what that was like going, dealing with vaxxed and really trying to spread that message while still dealing with everything that you were at home with your own children?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more complicated for us probably than other people just because my husband Patrick ended up driving the Vax bus for the first 6 months of the tour. So we kind of were in this whirlwind of amazingness because one of the things I think that Vax really did was open our eyes to how many other people were going through the same thing as us. So at the same time, we have this horrible thing happen with our kid, but then we also meet this amazing community of other people that have been through it. And then my husband leaves for 6 months because it was only supposed to be like a couple weeks, then a month, then 2 months. So it kept like going on and on. But I really used that time to kind of really focus in and be like the best biomed mom that I could be. So, anything that I could do, I was doing. And we were kind of in our own little rhythm. And at that point, I wasn't really doing a ton of advocacy. I was more like focusing on the kids and helping support whatever the Vax tour needed on the road. But it also was like hard because I found this new community and then I was ostracized by a lot of people for a long time, just because I was, sharing what had happened to us and our family and so many other people. So it was a great time, but also a really kind of sad time, because when you're going through something with your kid, that's really where you try to lean in on your friends and family. And for some of them, that wasn't ever going to be a reality where they were going to be there for me. But I will say, from the 20,000 foot view, nowadays, a lot of those people have come around. And so I just tried to make sure that I loved them and we didn't get in those conversations, and also made sure that they were around our kids a lot so they could see what, our life was like.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important too because I came out, had my coming out party, I guess, when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And announced that I was not going to be vaccinating my child, and had that same kind of reaction from friends and family, people that were extremely it was such a strange visceral reaction from people that I considered friends and family, and who suddenly looked at me in a completely different light despite any experiences that we had had
Hmm.
over the years. And so there is this very strange kind of ostracizing um, feeling. You feel very alone initially, I think, when you don't have that community. And then I went through that all over again when my son was then diagnosed with severe PANS,
Yeah.
because people tried to blame it on me not vaccinating him.
Oh my
So,
gosh. Wow.
um, so there's so many aspects, I think, to this, but um, tell me a little bit about over the years how people have started to shift. And I do think, I would be remiss if I didn't mention everything that happened during COVID times, because I do think that opened a lot of people's eyes. But not only that, it opened the doorway to conversations that people were completely shut down and didn't want to have prior to any of that. So, tell me a little bit about how that evolved for you with your personal circle, as things progressed.
Yeah, I think that COVID definitely was a big part of that. But for me personally, and with our friends and family, SB 276 being passed in California was a big driver because for those that don't know, that is the law that took away basically all of our medical exemptions to vaccination. And so while my younger son would have an IEP and would be able to go to school in California, my older son doesn't qualify for an IEP anymore, so basically forced him to homeschool. And also to kind of put us a little bit feeling like we were in the crosshairs if there was going to be any sort of, CPS or things like that happening. We definitely felt on the radar. And so we basically were forced out of California. We moved to Texas. But I mean, that was something that was really important to my husband and I, that we continued the chain of Californians. I actually got pregnant when we lived in New York, and we moved back before we had our older son so that we would have our fourth generation Californian. And I think a lot of my family realizing that even though we had a doctor's note, that that wasn't good anymore and we couldn't really live there anymore. That I think was a big wake up call for a lot of people that knew me, just, kind of knowing how important it was and how important it is to be around family because we are very, very much family people. I'm Italian, so like all my cousins, everybody in my family, like we're all really, really close, like brothers and sisters. And so it was really, really hard to move and leave there. And I think us having to make that decision definitely opened a lot of people's eyes. But without a question, COVID was the main driver of that. I think vaccine injury was a little bit kind of like hidden in the corner. And it has gained more visibility, but I think COVID really, really kind of brought that into the light, so to speak, unfortunately. I think a lot of people kind of maybe thought I was crazy when I would say, oh, well, they're not tested and public health is out of control. And these people, that a lot of this stuff isn't really science backed. And I think that they saw that during COVID themselves. And, it's one thing to have somebody tell you something, it's another thing to experience it. And so that is really when a lot of people, I'd start getting texts like, "Oh my gosh, I think you're right about vaccines. Like, I'm so sorry that I ever said that you made this up." So I think COVID was a big driver of that. And then I had a couple friends and family members who were injured by the COVID vaccine, unfortunately. And those were the really, really tough ones because it breaks my heart. Sorry, I'm getting emotional to think that anybody that I love would have that happen to them after I was like trying to warn them so much. So I'm great that they like, they're back in my life and our relationships are repaired, but I'm sorry that that had to happen to them for that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think our stories are very parallel. And, my son was eighth generation California born. So I am
Wow.
born and raised California girl and moved to Texas after the same
Yeah.
276, 277. And then the one that really scared me was actually that I believe it was AB 1262. That was the
Mm.
public health directive that essentially said that any kind of emergency would supersede your right to not take a medical product. So essentially, it gave them permission to be able to come into your home during an emergency. And that to me signaled,
Terrifying.
yeah, that signified to me that they weren't planning to enact this in order not to use it, right? Like there was a very specific directive because it came down the pipeline at the exact same time as 276, which was the second bill in California. And so, yeah, it forced me to really come head on with this idea that like you, I was in the natural health space. I was afraid that I would be caught in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
My son's father had been very outspoken against the Department of Education, for example, trying to implement things within the chiropractic field. So there was a lot of things that made me feel very unsafe being in California still. So talk to me about that transition. So you guys decided to come to Texas. And now I know that Dell's now here in Texas. So was that a simultaneous decision? How did that work?
Yeah. So Dell kind of sat us all down and said, I don't know what it is, but something's happening and we have to get out of California. And I mean, 276 had just passed and we were kind of feeling the same. And so we all decided to move to Austin. Um, We ended up not being able to move as soon as we wanted to, just because the logistics of moving the entire nonprofit over there took longer than we thought. So we kind of slept on mattresses at my dad's house for 6 months before we were able to move here. But we officially moved here in December. Our last show in LA, which is where our studio was January 30th. So the timing was crazy. And then our executive producer, literally, we were joking, like as they like closed down the border, she was like the last person out. So we kind of all decided collectively that we had to leave and chose Austin as a home base because it kind of fit in everybody's wish list, so to speak, for what they wanted for their kids. And my kids were actually really excited because my older son, we had been homeschooling and he really wanted to just go to like a normal school, not public school. He's not in public school, but just, with other kids and not have to be Mondays we're over here and Tuesdays we're over here, but mom's working, so it added a lot more stability. And then my younger son, who's on the spectrum, he's never been to school because we didn't feel comfortable sending him in California just because they're so overcrowded there. So it's been really, really great for the kids. They're really happy here. They fit in well here, but we really do miss our family a lot. So that's the one caveat. But for freedom, it's kind of worth it. And then having COVID happen, moving here, I immediately met a ton of like-minded people because it was crazy because we'd rallied for all these things in California. As soon as we get here, they shut the schools down and we're rallying to open them up again. And I was thinking, this is why I left California. I can't believe I'm doing this again. But what's great about being here is we rallied, they opened the schools. We rallied, they took the masks off. So it was nice to be able to be somewhere where you felt like you had a little bit of win.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so talk to us about what ICAN is and the kinds of things that you're doing behind the scenes. Just so everybody's aware, the HighWire is the podcast show that is explaining a lot of the things that ICAN is doing and talks about a lot of the mission. I've had Erin Siri on the podcast, who is the lead attorney for ICAN, who's presenting a lot of the cases and FOIA requests and things like that they're doing. But tell us a little bit more about the ICAN mission and what you are doing to achieve that.
Sure. Yeah. So our mission is to eradicate man-made disease. ICAN was founded in 2016 with the vision of it being a legal powerhouse because there was so much going on legislatively. We felt that there was an avenue and a strategy in the courts where we could really affect change um, in a way where we don't have to worry about the next legislative session. So our first win was we sued HHS through FOIA, asking for some of the their biennial reports and a task force that were part of the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act that they're supposed to be doing under the law, and we won that. And we thought, how is anyone going to know that we're winning all this stuff? So the HighWire became our first educational program. That was launched in spring of 2017. And so basically, what we do is kind of a multi-pronged approach. We come up with a legal strategy, and Aaron Siri and his team really take the lead on that. And then every time we have a win on the HighWire, we kind of go into it and dive deep on that. And not only that, we also I think we're one of the only places early on that kind of had the guts and the scientific knowledge to really tell people the truth, what was happening during COVID. And so we're not only, you know, a legal powerhouse, we're also a media powerhouse in the health freedom space.
And tell us a little bit about some of your more recent wins then.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot during COVID, especially. We our lead attorney is the one that the data that the FDA wanted 75 years to wait on. That was our attorney that won that case. So that's all the clinical trial data for COVID-19 vaccines is publicly available now, which our legal team's been combing through. So that's something that we've done. We also got access to the vSafe data. And for people that don't know what vSafe is, that's an app on your phone that everybody who had COVID-19 vaccine was encouraged to download and put their symptoms in. Now, they had like very generic symptoms listed on there, like fever, chills, arm soreness, but they also had an open text box where people could write in what's happening to them. So we fought in court for a couple years and we are finally getting all the open data entries, and they're really, really sad, unfortunately. A lot of them are like, no one's helping me. I think I'm going to die. And then there'd be people checking in like they passed away. So those are some of the big ones that we've done there. We also did win back the religious exemption in West Virginia. However, the Board of Education there is not giving up. We've had briefs even filed against us by the ACLU. I really think that Pharma thinks that if West Virginia falls, that it's going to be a big loss for them. Aaron has told me he goes to court and there's like 30 lawyers from the other side. So they are, right now, we're still like kind of in a holding pattern in West Virginia. I think they're trying to just exhaust us legally, to try to win that case. But if you know us, you know ICAN, and you know Aaron Siri, you know Del Bigtree, we're not going to give up. So that's kind of our big litigation that's going on right now. We're also trying to strike down the PrEP Act and the countermeasures injury compensation program. For those that don't know about that, the COVID-19 vaccine is also free from liability under the PrEP Act. And those that were injured by the COVID-19 vaccine, we're really trying to get them compensation from the CICP right now, especially with Bobby as head of HHS. So that's some ongoing litigation we have. We also are suing hospitals that have been giving newborns hepatitis B vaccine without consent. So that's a whole nother um, arm of our legal team that's working on that. And we're really trying to dig deep right now into geoengineering and figure out what the government knows, what they don't know, what they're funding, what they're not funding. So that's another ongoing legal battle that we
Mhm.
have. And
Yeah.
I mean, we have over 100 and like 85 FOIAs right now outstanding. I think we have something like 50 court cases still that are ongoing. Some of them I can't discuss just because where they are in litigation, but we have a ton of stuff happening all the time. And it's one thing that I've learned about litigation is that it can take years and years and years to litigate things. So I think this year we'll have some really great, amazing big wins. Hopefully, West Virginia will be solidified and then we can move on. But we have some other cases I think that could really be helpful in other states as well,
Mhm.
that don't have exemptions.
Yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on. And anything on Lyme disease by chance
Oh,
that you can talk about?
we might have some FOIAs going on for Lyme disease. I'd have to check in with legal on that, but
Yeah.
I will and let you know because that's a huge, huge issue.
Yeah, that's definitely very near and dear to my heart. My son and I have both been diagnosed with Lyme disease,
Oh
and
my gosh.
we
I'm
have a
sorry to
crazy
hear that.
story. Yeah. Actually, that was his onset of PANS was with Lyme disease. So, that's a whole other crazy story that I've told on the podcast before that I won't get into this time, but yeah, lots of crazy things when it comes to Lyme disease, and I know Dr. Malone is coming out with some new things that
Oh, great.
from FOIA requests that have come out. So yeah, so hopefully we'll get some more answers on that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So now looking forward, I know we've got just so many things in litigation, and that's probably going to take an eternity to resolve all of those things, unfortunately. But what do you see ICANN getting involved in or wanting to get involved in moving forward? Because I think a lot of times, we think about vaccine injury, of course, and with Bobby at HHS, I do think that that's huge progress, and we're making huge progress. There was just, for those of you listening, a roundtable yesterday discussing vaccine injury, which I think is huge when it comes to just acknowledging these kinds of things and being able to speak candidly about them. Um, so moving forward, you mentioned geoengineering as one thing that ICANN is getting involved with. Are there any other things that you see potentially trying to get a handle on from a more political or litigation standpoint?
I did fail to mention that we are in litigation currently regarding the vaccine safety data link. For those that don't know what that is, well, if you've seen the movie An Inconvenient Study, which if you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's free to watch online at inconvenientstudy.com. That took a true vaxxed, unvaxxed population and compared health outcomes, which didn't look great for the vaccinated. And the government has similar data in the vaccine safety data link, which we are told all that data was sent back to the HMO groups, which is where the data comes from, some of the largest HMO groups. So right now we're fighting to get access to that because I think one of the things we really want to do is run that data on a bigger pool. So that's something we're really fighting to do right now. And yeah, geoengineering. I mean, there are so many things. Self-spreading vaccines, aerosolized vaccines. That's also on our radar right now, just because especially in the age of AI, I'm sure that the technology is going to change. So we're really trying to stay ahead of that as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, so talk to me about An Inconvenient Study. I've seen the film. For those of you who have not, I highly recommend it. It goes into detail about how Dr. Marcus Servos, who is very much embedded in the pro-vaccine camp, if you will, who decided that he would conduct a study on vaccinated versus unvaccinated children. And the results, I think, probably astounded him to the point that he is not wanting to publish that particular study. And, we can speculate as to why that might be. But, Kat, I'd love to get your take on it. When An Inconvenient Study came out, what was the reception from people maybe who were more staunchly in that pro-vaccine camp? I know that you've been to various screenings and things like that. Um, did it change minds, in your opinion?
Yeah, I actually I think it did. I had some friends and some family members watch the film, and I definitely think it opened their eyes. And I think one of the reasons why is because some of the conditions that were found higher in vaccinated groups were conditions that they suffer from or their children suffer from. Because it's not really just an autism conversation, it's really like an autoimmune dysfunction conversation, which we see so rampant in our country right now. Um, I think it's really opened a lot of eyes. It's been kind of like an access point for people, so to speak, where that film really, I think, kind of helps open the door. And you see this very esteemed epidemiologist on hidden camera, basically admitting that the study is great, the data is great, but he's worried that he would be fired if he publishes the results, which is kind of the antithesis of science. So I think that, Dr. Zervas's words kind of speak for themselves. And I think a lot of people see that when they see that film.
Yeah. I I feel almost a kind of empathy for the man, right? Like
I know.
yeah, I don't know that it was very clear to me in watching the film that he believed he was doing good by supporting vaccination. Um, and I think, that realization must have been totally world altering, right? Like it flipped everything upside down, everything he thought he knew, right? Um,
Yeah. And he, was did the study with the challenge of whatever the results are, we'll put them out. If they were going to be, terrible for people that don't vaccinate, we would have encouraged him to put it out because that was kind of the conversation that was had with Dr. Zervos when
right.
this kind of first came about. But yeah, I do have empathy for him because it's a very tough spot to be in with somebody of his caliber and his station within the scientific community.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine what that realization must have been like for someone like that, and realizing now he's kind of at the end of his career, and um, you can't unvaccinate all these
Yeah.
children, right? So yeah,
There's just such fear around the program, like and I think that will ultimately be its own undoing is that there's such fear that if people know the truth, that everybody will just stop vaccinating altogether. And
mhm.
that's why things have evolved the way they have. And that's why scientists don't do studies or don't put studies out, or why safety trials aren't done properly, why we have our placebo pyramid when it comes to vaccines, which for those who don't know what that is, it's no childhood vaccine on the schedule right now has ever been tested against a saline placebo. I mean, that's the reason for all of this is to protect the program at all costs.
Yeah, I and with no regard for the patients themselves, right? I mean, so much of this is about the insidious nature of this idea behind, publish or perish in the scientific world.
Hmm.
It goes so deep into um, the structure is really designed to kind of have this very incestuous kind of relationship with the pharmaceutical companies and the hospital-based, insurance-based systems. Like all of these players, they have to play along, they have to play the game in order for the entire system not to fail. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you've read Aaron Siri's book, Vaccines, Amen, The Religion of Vaccines. It is truly a religion.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Um, okay, so you mentioned this, and I wanted to make sure people listening are aware, because I don't know if I mentioned it when Aaron Siri was on, but you guys have a couple of depositions. I believe they're up on your website. Is that correct?
Yes, they're all at the highwire.com.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
those are depositions of Dr. Stanley Plotkin and Dr. Catherine Edwards, both kind of very esteemed people within the vaccine industry. And some of the things that they have had to admit to is quite disturbing, I think, but also sheds so much light on this idea of the corruption and how it is so intricately woven into the system itself. I've spoken with many people about this idea that the science that is being done is really only done as a confirmatory kind of process rather than true science, which would be more of a questioning kind of, right? Like the word hypothesis itself is designed to question um, the status quo, if you will. But we've kind of gotten into this very strange uh, place where we now say, in fact, I remember when Neil deGrasse Tyson was on the High Wire and said something to the effect of science is consensus. And it to me was like absolutely mind blowing. This is a guy who's supposed to be like, the ultimate scientist, and he's saying science is consensus, but science is the complete antithesis of consensus.
Hmm.
I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you bring up. I will say that Neil deGrasse Tyson was very nice and super cool to our crew when he was here. So I always try to give him that prop. But I think he's more of like a Bill Nye scientist. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like he's kind of in it for show. And like a lot of what he talks about is kind of like semantical, in my opinion. So, but he also did produce a movie that came hard against anti-vaxxers. So he put himself in that space. So he deserves whatever he gets in that regard. But going back to Stanley Plotkin and Catherine Edwards, like Stanley Plotkin is the author of the textbook on vaccines, and Catherine Edwards is a co-author. We call them the godfather and the godmother of vaccines. And what's so crazy and goes back to what you're saying about it not being science is if you go back to the deposition of both of them. So Stanley Plotkin, for instance, Aaron asked him in his deposition, like, do you know how long hepatitis B vaccine was tried for? I don't know. Do you know what it was tried against? I don't know. All of these things, he gives them the the data from the insert. He goes, oh, 4 days, 5 days, whatever. He was the principal investigator for that vaccine. Like, we have people who are supposed to be checking for safety, who are making the product. And really, you're right, the endpoints in all of the studies are definitely efficacy. You can tell that they're not looking for safety in studies because of the endpoints. And because if anything ever were to happen, it's never from a vaccine. It can never be because it doesn't live in their brain that that could ever happen. One, and number two, nobody ever does studies to show harm, which kind of leads me to Catherine Edwards, the godmother of vaccines. When she was being deposed by Aaron, she could not admit, and she eventually did, but for a very long time could not admit that there are no studies showing that any vaccine given during the first 6 months of life does not cause autism. There are no studies on those vaccines showing whether they do or they don't. So they just assume that they don't, which is not science. And you can, if you, anybody watching this right now, I'd encourage you to go to the highwire.com and search up deposition of Catherine, Kathryn Edwards, and watch for yourself the horrible struggle she had just to admit a fact that these studies don't exist because it doesn't exist in their paradigm of their religion of vaccines. All that they believe is that they're totally safe and they totally work and everyone has to get them. And if you don't, you're a bad parent and you don't deserve medical care.
Well, and I believe her statement was actually that Aaron Siri had badgered her into
That's exactly
answering
what she said. You
the
badgered me into
question.
it. And that is also another lawsuit I failed to mention that ICAN did FOIA the CDC asking for the studies showing that the vaccines given to babies in their first 6 months of life do not cause autism. And they failed to provide any study at all. So we kind of proved in court through FOIA, which is a actual novel litigation strategy that was come up by the ICAN legal team. So that's kind of a new thing that we kind of invented, I guess, so to speak. So yeah, they're on paper, in the record, stipulated order signed by a judge. The CDC does not have any study to prove that the vaccines given in the first 6 months of life do not cause autism.
Right. However, the mantra, if you will, which was even posted on the CDC website, was that vaccines do not cause autism. A
Hmm.
definitive statement, right? That doctors everywhere, pediatricians everywhere, repeat ad nauseum. However, they don't have any scientific proof to back up that statement. But they get away with it because they don't have and they haven't studied whether or not vaccines do cause autism. So they get into
Hmm.
this semantics argument over, well, we don't have any proof that they don't cause autism, but we don't have any proof that they do either.
Hmm.
So we're going to just choose to say that they don't, which is so deceptive, in my opinion. I
And they
just
know it
would.
is too. They know it is. It's just again, like Stanley Plotkin has said that he hopes that his book will be a Bible for vaccinologists and that he hopes that it's more accurate than the Bible, which just kind of speaks to his ego. Um, it's it's callous, it's cruel. I mean, Stanley Plotkin is also somebody who tested on developmentally disabled people, a lot of vaccine trials, people that were of low socioeconomic status. So that doesn't surprise me, given his track record that he feels him and other people that because he's literally trained every single vaccinologist like in the world, that
Mhm.
those people don't have a problem basically lying, saying that these products are safe when they have no data to show that.
Right. So and not only that, but there is even questions about efficacy, right? So the efficacy that
Hmm.
they're discussing has to do in large part with like things like the creation of antibodies. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the vaccine is effective. If you create antibodies, okay, you might stave off some of the short-term impacts of that particular illness, but you might have long-term effects of that particular vaccine, right? So the mantra again of safe and effective, number one, we don't have the safety data, and number two, the effectiveness is in question in the vast majority of these vaccines as well. So, it's disingenuous at best to say that
Hmm.
any of these things are safe and effective.
At
It's just,
best.
yeah.
Yeah. Especially when you have
Oh,
parents screaming from the rooftops that their kids are being injured, which is why the 1986 Act was passed in the first place because
yeah,
people were being injured.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's truly unbelievable to me that so many people are so blinded by science. I don't know. I'm like singing that song, she blinded me with science.
I thought the same thing when you said that.
But I think ultimately the vast majority of people just didn't want to have to do the work, right? They didn't want to have to look into the science. I mean, it's we're not all scientifically minded, right? Like so many of us aren't. That's not, we don't want to be reading scientific papers. We'd rather be singing opera, like all of these kinds of things that uh, the scientific community really just hopes and prays that we don't read the science. I think in a lot of ways, because because it will reveal some of the large gaping holes within some of these studies.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, that was another thing too that COVID was great for. Like Dr. Malone, I don't think would have ever been a believer. Peter McCullough, all these people that kind of opened the door. I remember the first time Peter McCullough was on the HighWire, we gave him a copy of our letter exchange with HHS and told him to read it. And I knew the second we gave that to him, I'm like, this guy is gonna go hog wild on this. And now it totally is because once you kind of realize that that could happen and you see the data or the lack of data, there's really no going back.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and he and Nicole Scher have just put out the
Hmm.
newest study on, vaxxed versus unvaxxed kids as well. So, it's been this. COVID was really the scientific community's worst enemy when it
Yeah,
comes to
public health. Yeah.
when it comes to exposing, all of the, like I said, these large gaping holes in the practice of science and medicine, really. Yeah, it's so crazy for me to think about where we would be if COVID hadn't happened. And I try to
Yeah.
look at, things from a more positive perspective and understand that, so much of what the conversations that are happening today. I mean, I don't think Bobby would have been health secretary without all of these things that have happened. I don't think we would be having conversations about vaccine injury. I don't think homeopathy would be, acknowledged at some of these roundtable discussions, which has been a huge thing for,
I'm a
in
huge
my
fan of
world.
homeopathy, by the way. Love homeopathy. I wish that it was
Awesome.
part of medical training. Unfortunately, it's not, but so many issues
Yeah.
I think could be remedied, ha 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 ha, by using homeopathy.
100%. Well, I mean that's what that's what I aim to do here is just educate people as much as possible on some of the alternatives, when it comes to their healthcare, because you don't have to rely on, traditionally trained medical professionals all the time. There are other options out there. There are options that have been around for, centuries. And
Yeah, and they work well. Just a quick little side note. I
yeah,
used homeopathy with my younger son on the spectrum and oh my gosh, day and night, potty trained, riding the bus, so many words, been great for him. And then my older son just had to have oral surgery because he had a permanent molar that had to be moved. And I forget when you go, they're like, "Oh, did he take his antibiotic?" I was like, "Yes." And my son was like, "I did." I'm like, "Yes, you did. Shut up." And we just used homeopathy for his recovery. I didn't use any of the mouthwashes or antibiotics or pain medicine even, and he's good as new in 4 days. So homeopathy works really well.
Amazing. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for that testimony. I hope it brings more people to the table when it comes to homeopathy because I've seen it work miracles as well.
I think too,
Right.
part of the issue people have with homeopathy that are part of like the system is like you really can do a lot of it yourself. It's great, to have a homeopath that you're working with to guide you, but if something pops up at home, I don't need to go run to urgent care. I just go to my remedy kit and I'm like, oh, we're gonna use this and this and this and this. It really does empower you to take healthcare in your own hands, I think, which is part of the reason why so many people in the system think it's woo-woo or whatever.
Absolutely. Well, that goes all the way back to Rockefeller and
Hmm.
the takeover and the AMA and all of those things, which we've gotten into here on the podcast a few times. But yeah, so much of homeopathy is the idea of giving someone agency over their own health. And unfortunately, over the last, 100 years or so, we've really kind of outsourced that and allowed doctors to be this authority figure who tells us what we need to do for our health. But they're not
Hmm.
trained in healthcare. They're really trained in symptom management, and
Yeah.
it's very unfortunate that we've kind of gone down that road. But hopefully, we can steer it back in the other direction. I think there's a lot of things moving in that direction in a positive way.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that.
Well, and I think ICAN has been so instrumental in really opening people's eyes, helping to get information out there that is so integral to this mission. Understanding that yes, vaccines are a huge part of this conversation. There's a number of other things that are essentially poisoning us. And we need to know and understand what those things are. And so I'm so grateful to ICANN for the message that they've been able to spread, widely and to give people not only the information in a more bite-sized package so that they can really truly understand it at a deep level instead of having to go and research on their own and digest mountains of scientific information, which might be overwhelming to just the average mom who is looking to
Mhm.
help and maintain health for her children.
Mm. Well, that's great. Great to hear. And also, too, I will say that we do try to digest it and like translate it, but we also do every week send out all of our sources for the show. So if, we always tell people like, we're not telling you what to think. Like you go look up the sources and, check us. And, if you find something that we got wrong, let us know. It hasn't really happened yet, but we really do strive to empower people to take information in their own hands and use it however they see accordingly as well.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who are looking for a place to donate that will support you and support the mission that you are trying to accomplish within your own families, I highly recommend you go to icandecide.org and make a donation, please. That is my goal, is to really help ICANN throughout all of this. They have tons of litigation that they're involved with that are truly helping people like you and me. So that is my plea to you this week to please go ahead and go to icandecide.org. It doesn't have to be much. Your tiny donation, every little bit counts, I promise. All right,
Thank you,
Kat.
Karen. That's really sweet.
All right, Kat. So, every guest on the show is asked 8 rapid fire questions. These questions are designed to give us a little bit of insight into who you are and what makes you tick. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number one, if you could choose only one natural remedy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Vitamin C.
Nice. I just took some right before.
I
All
love
right.
vitamin C. It's like vitamin C to me is like Windex to the Greek people in that movie, my big fat Greek wedding.
All right. Awesome. Number two, tell us something most people don't know about you.
I was born with a paralyzed vocal cord, and the doctors told my parents I would never be able to speak or eat solid food. And it
Wow.
just re one day my mom and I like couldn't really cry when I was a baby, and she said one day, and my grandma, when they told us that, my grandma stepped and said, "She will sing in the choir. You're wrong." So by whatever miracle happened. Obviously, I can eat food and I definitely have a voice. So that's kind of like a weird, quirky thing about me.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, though, actually, because you became a singer.
I know, I know.
Grandma was right.
She was,
All
yeah.
right. Number three, if I were to compile a playlist of happy music, what song would you suggest be added?
Happy music. I actually really love that song Happy by Pharrell because my kids love it. And we used to do a thing called the Pajama Jam every night where before we go to bed, we get in our pajamas and dance. And that was always our first song.
Nice. All right. Number four, what's your favorite guilty pleasure?
Watching The Real Housewives. I love it.
Oh,
I just turn my brain off and I don't have those kind of problems. It's just this, it's embarrassing, but it is my guilty pleasure.
that's hilarious. All right. Number five, what is the most influential book you've ever read?
Actually, the most influential book I've ever read for me was a book by Dr. Laura Schlesinger, who I don't listen to anymore because she's super mean to parents who don't vaccinate. It was called Bad Childhood, Good Life, and it changed my life forever.
Nice. Very cool. All right. What does the word revolution mean to you?
To me, the word revolution means doing what you think is right in your life and everything you're doing, even if it's against the status quo.
And what does the word remedy mean to you?
Remedy to me means fixing something, but in my mind, I can see what it looks like. It's like healing something, not like patching it over, like actually healing it from within in a long term, instead of like having something sewn shut, it just kind of like seals itself up, if that even makes sense.
Yeah,
Innate healing, maybe it would be a better way to say it.
I love it. Yeah. All right. And lastly, if you could impart one piece of wisdom onto our listeners, what would that be?
It would be to always go with your gut. If you don't feel good about something, don't do it. You can always wait and do it later, but you can't undo it.
100%.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget, go to icandecide.org. I'll put the link down in the show notes. Thank you, Kat, for joining us. I look forward to hearing from you guys in the future and following the mission of ICAN for a very long time to come.
Thank you, Erin. I appreciate you having me on and supporting ICANN and also for all the great work you do too. Very thankful to have you as a colleague.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
With hope as a guiding light, through darkest days we'll fight the night. With a whole lot of passion, with a whole lot of truth, Remedy Revolution is here for you.